Hey everybody, let's see, this is my new Old Town Topwater PDL. I got the 106 version, and I am installing, or I installed, my Garmin Striker 4 CV onto it. It's a very common, inexpensive fish finder, perfect size for kayaks. And the problem that I ran into is this comes with a mounting plate for your transducer, and they call it a universal transducer mount. But the problem I had was this is the bracket that comes with my transducer. It sits on there like that. None of the holes in this plate and the two outside screws that hold it on, none of them match up with the mount that came with it. The other problem that I have is that even if I drilled some new holes, the bottom of this transducer sits over an inch below the skid plate and the keel line. So if you were coming into shore to beach your kayak, you would just snap off your transducer because all of the weight of your kayak and yourself and everything would just be on that. Loading it into your truck, on your rack, your trailer, whatever you're going to do, all the weight would be on here. This would be the lowest point, and that's no good, obviously. So I had to make my own bracket that would marry up to this plate and keep the transducer as low as possible, but still function. So I'll show you guys that next. Alright, so here it is. Hopefully this is in frame. Yeah. I just went down to the local hardware store. I got a piece of 1-inch aluminum angle and a piece of like heavier gauge aluminum plate. I used this, the bracket that came with it, to lay out where the holes went and cut the slot out for the cord, because that cord sticks out the back and there's no way to remove it, so you have to be able to pull this on and off around the cord. So all my holes line up, and the neat thing about this is you can mount it this way and get it low, which is the way I installed it, or you could flip it over and you'd get about an inch of rise, which puts it just at the same level as the skid plate here. The problem with that, and maybe I'll try and mount the camera across here. Let me put it on here real fast. I'll come back. Okay, this is my transducer fully installed with the little bracket I made. I got it sitting really as low as I could with what I had. I mean, I could have went with a bigger L bracket and got it to maybe just even set flush, but you do need a little space underneath because the wire in my transducer comes out. There's a little rubber grommet around it, and you need space for that. Plus, I didn't want the wire comes out and points backwards, so I didn't want to have a big hard kink in that. So I left a bit of room. It comes out, goes to the side, and then back down the scupper hole. But I wanted it as low as possible because I don't know how well you guys can see this, but even sitting down there in that thing, it still sits proud of the bottom of the boat. It's below this, so it's somewhat protected. But if I was going to put this in the tailgate of my truck, sorry, I'm probably screaming into the microphone. If I'm going to slide this into the back of the truck and it pops off that edge and goes down, it's going to hit the transducer before it hits the hull. So even mounting it as low as I could, that it still sets proud. So I mean, that's just something you guys are going to have to be aware of when you mount your transducer there, is that even setting it that low, here I can raise it, go down, you can kind of see it still sets out. So you're still going to be putting some pressure on it if you load it onto a trailer or the back of your truck. You have to be careful that you're not putting any weight on that transducer. Alright, well that's, as far as that goes, I'm pretty happy with it. I was a little worried that being recessed down in that hole like that, that it wouldn't have enough contact with the water, but this whole cavity fills with water, so that was not an issue. The only time I had any kind of an issue was I was in some pretty heavy chop, and I was pedaling kind of fast, and I was getting a lot of like air bubbles in there while I was moving. So it put a little bit of interference on my graph, but just normal fishing conditions, going really slow in calm water, zero problems. It took the water temperature just fine. Everything was great, so I couldn't be happier with that. Alright, now I will flip it over and show you guys how I mounted the fish finder and the battery. Alright, so now that I've got the transducer installed, the wire is run up through the scupper holes. I didn't go through the hole with a through hole kit. I don't know what that will do for the warranty. And for me, I'm not going in any heavy weather or surf, so I'm not really worried about this hatch being no longer waterproof or watertight. But anytime you run the wires over this lip, this rubber gasket's not going to make a tight seal anymore around each one of those. So there'll be some routes for water to get in there, but I mean, honestly, unless you're rolling this sucker over or going through some really heavy surf, which I don't plan on doing with a 10.5 foot kayak, I don't think it'll be a problem. And then my transducer wire is just coiled up and zip tied, and then comes back out and goes to the back of my fish finder. So I just bought myself a little 7 amp hour $20 battery from Amazon, and I needed a way to mount it in there, and I didn't buy a waterproof box for it, so I'll show you guys what I made up. There it is. What that is that foam floor mat, you know, like the puzzle piece kind of stuff. I just cut it to length and used contact cement and made myself a little soft shell case for it, and then I had one of these cheap straps from like the camping section that I just wrapped around it, and on the back of that I took some, whoop, I need to find a spot to mount that. Took some of this double-sided Velcro strip that sticks to itself like that, and it goes around that upright that's in there. So I just stick it in there, Velcro it down, and it's nice and secure. It's easy to remove. I can leave this bracket or this strap attached and leave it in there, and then when I want to take the battery out to charge it, I just pop it out and pull the whole box, and then that strap stays inside. Pretty simple, silly. I probably should go with a watertight box someday and then secure it in there with some Velcro or some other way. But for now, that worked. I had the I had the materials on hand, so it got me out on the water, and it works out perfect for now. Another thing I didn't have was a way to mount my Garmin to the track. Here, I'll take that off and show it to you guys, but I made this little sliding bracket with a piece of cutting board I got from Walmart. So it's like 3/8 of an inch of solid, you know, cutting board, so it's pretty durable. This T-nut I got on Amazon was a package of like 6 of them for, I think it was $20 or $14 or something. Came with the knob, and then that just slides back and forth. I gave myself a little bit of slack so that I could move this up when I'm fishing, but if I need to paddle for any long distance, the fish finder's in the way, so then I just loosen it up and slide it out of the way, and then that gives me a lot of room for the paddle to move, and I don't bump into my fish finder. So it's super easy. So I'll take that off and show you guys what that looks like. Please excuse the mess. I spent all my time putting this together, and then I spent the next 3 days out on the water playing with my new kayak. But this is the little mount I made. It's super simple. They make a gear track mount for this fish finder, but it's $40, and I mean, I already spent a lot of money on the kayak and the fish finder and all the other accessories, so $40 just to mount my fish finder on a track just seems ridiculous. I'm sure it's probably worth the money if you really want a super adjustable system, but for me, a piece of $10 cutting board that I still have 99% of it left. This just took a small portion right out of the corner. This was the corner of the cutting board, And then I used the circumference of this to lay out that, cut it out with my jigsaw, mounted this, just drilled holes and screwed these directly in. They tapped themselves, and then I just filed off the little points that protruded through. I put this little screw head here, and what it does is it fits in the slot of the track. Let me get a piece of track. So when you mount this, that goes through the deal like that, and then that little screw head keeps it aligned in the track, so you're not getting any side to side. Because if you didn't have that there, I mean, this would just could swivel around. You'd have to really crank down on this nut to keep it from swiveling. I didn't want to deal with that, so just put a little screw head in there. I did file down the sides a little bit to make sure it fits snug, and it does. It's pretty snug, but once it goes in, it still slides, but there's no side-to-side movement at all. Alright, so that would just go in there. Actually, it shows it pretty good right there. So, and then you just crank that down, and that's locked in there secure. It's not coming off. And then that's just the base for this, which is snaps in there like that. This is adjustable up and down, and there's gearing inside so you can swivel it that way. So I get, just with the mount that came with it, I get a lot of adjustability, and then with this little bracket, I get, on my longer track, I get forward and back pretty good adjustability. So that's it for, I don't know, maybe $40 total. I made the bracket for the transducer, and I bought all the hardware and cutting board for the system itself. The hardware is Yak Attack Gear Track Hardware Assortment Pack. I got it on Amazon. I think it was 20 bucks, but it comes with like 3 of these bolts and then some other like Allen headed bolts with the base that has the threads in it. So it's pretty universal. I'm sure I'll use them up eventually or whatever, but it was worth the money. I mean, these are pretty good quality. I'm not upset with having to spend that kind of money on good hardware. It's just with hardware and and everything else that comes with it, it starts to add up pretty fast. So that is how I installed my Garmin Striker 4 with the CV transducer onto my new Old Town Topwater PDL. Thanks for watching, guys.